Oh. Okay, Boker Tov. We're learning today Leo Nishmat Avigdor Chai Avraham Ben Rachalea Ner Tzvi. Also for the Refuah Shlema for all those injured in war. Leo Nishmot, all those who have fallen in the war. Giborim. And for Am Yisrael, we need Yishot, Ufot, Nechamot. So we are going to move into Mishnah Gimel. We'll hopefully do 3 and 4 today, Gimel and Daled. So in the first chapter, the third Mishnah, we're going to start off with a man who's mentioned really only one time, as far as I know, in the entire Talmud. In Mishwell, he was a Tana, so he wouldn't be mentioned in the Gemara unless he said something. But he's a unique individual in the fact that there aren't a lot of people that are mentioned only once in Mishnah. But by the way, just as an aside, when somebody, let's say you may be familiar with some of the names of the Amoraim and the Gemara, Rava, Abaye, Shmuel, Rav. So when they say something, but there's certain individuals who we hear from very little, 2-3 times the whole time, the entire Talmud. So what they tend to do is they mention their name, and then they also mentioned like Aga, like just by the way, that they also said the following or taught the following, because they're trying to keep all their learning in one spot instead of having to go looking all the place. Remember, and I mean this facetiously, there's no concept of, oh, just click on his name and see where else he appears, right? It's like, so that's in order, so the compilers of the Gemara wanted to give kavod to these people. So, but in this case, this apparently is the only place he appears. Okay, I'm going to read and translate into English, then we'll talk a little about who he was and talk about what he said. Antigonos ish socho, for those of you who are familiar with the play Antigone, it's the same name. Okay. And Antigonos ish socho kibel mishimon hatzadik. So Antigonos learned his Torah from Shimon HaTzadik, who we mentioned in the prior Mishnah. Huaya Omer, he used to say, Al tiyu ka'avadim shamshim et rav al menat lekabel pras. Don't serve Hashem with the intention of the reason you're doing it is to get a reward. But rather, be servants of Hashem with no intention of or without the purpose of getting a reward. In other words, you can have it in mind, but that shouldn't be the reason you're doing the mitzvah. And the fear of Hashem or of the heavens should be upon you. So on the surface, it sounds like a very straightforward idea. What is he telling us? Most people, not all, most people, when they go to work, and even people who really like what they do, I've almost never had a job I've not really liked. There have been good days and bad days, but I've always, as being a rabbi of a shul, being a director of purchasing, a teacher, I always like what I do. But ultimately, why do we do these things? For parnasah, right? You know, if you want to volunteer, that's great. But if you're looking to earn a living, it's nice to enjoy what you're doing, but ultimately you want to also get that paycheck. There's a very big difference between a factory where the line workers work from paycheck to paycheck. I don't mean it literally like that they can't make ends meet. I'm saying that they work for their paycheck versus the owner's kid who knows that business will become his. He's nice to get the paycheck, but he's really more into I need to make this business grow. I used to say there was in this company I worked for many years as a manufacturer in the locksmith industry. I was there for 17 years, I think it was. And that's how I learned Spanish. I taught because all the line workers, most were from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Guatemala. So I wanted to learn, so I taught myself Spanish. Anyways, so there was one machine they had that it would take a piece of cardboard with the logo of the company. You lay all these pieces on it. You put it under a machine, and the plastic comes down. It's called shrink wrap. It comes down automatically, seals it, and then they put it on a board and chop it into these. I used to say when the bell would ring at 3:30 for the end of the day, that if they were holding it midair, they would just drop it. Like, that's it. The time is up. There's no concept of I'm going to work 30 milliseconds longer than I have to. So there's the idea. They're working specifically for pay. That's it. So here, Antigonos Ish Socho is giving us a general rule. When we serve Hashem, it should not be because of the reward. It should be because of what? What would you think should be the motivating factor based just on that? One word. In Hebrew or English, Spanish, Swedish, I don't care. What should be the motivating factor to serve Hashem? Emunah. Good. What else? Ahava. And we're going to prove that. It's emunah on a grander scale. And a more specific, it's ahava. Because if you don't have emunah, what are you serving Hashem? Sorry? Wait a second. We're going to come to that. Does that sound like from the first half that he's talking about yirah? Don't serve Hashem because you want to get a prize, a reward. Just serve Hashem with no intention of the reward. Does that sound like a yirah aspect or an ahava aspect? What's motivating you? And I'll prove that it is ahava. We'll see that in a few minutes, though. Okay, so but before we talk a little bit more in depth about the meaning of the Mishnah, let's talk for a minute about who this man was. Antigonos Socho. Where is Socho? It's really only mentioned, as far as I know, once or twice in Tanakh, once in Sefer Shmuel regarding Shaul, and it is the area of Emek. There's two opinions. It's either the area of Emek Ha'ela, not far from Beit Shemesh, or it might be near Harei Chevron. No one knows for sure, but it refers to the area of Emek Ha'ela in Shmuel, also is Socho. It's spelled multiple ways, by the way. For our purpose, it doesn't make any difference. But understanding, remember, we were talking about this whole Hishtal Shaluta Halacha, like the whole chain of how things went from generation to generation. Shimon HaTzadik, we met in the last Mishnah. He was the end of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. This man, Antigonos Ish Socho, is a bridge between the time of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah and the next generation that will become the Zugot, the pairs, like Shammai and Hillel, Shmai and Avtalion. We're going to meet them also, a couple of them today. And when I say that, I mean that literally. Okay, and I'll explain why I'm saying that shortly. I mean, they're not coming into your house. But you'll understand what I mean. So, anyways, he filled the position of the Nasi. He was a student of Shimon HaTzadik, and he lived actually, which is kind of cool, one or two generations before the Chashmonaim. Here we are in Kislev, 3 weeks, a little bit more away from Hanukkah. I'll get it. One of those Jew holidays. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. And so it's kind of nice that we're learning about him as far as the timing. So there, in order to understand also, we know that they said more than the things they're saying in the Mishnah, right? What made this so front in his mind that it's put into the Mishnah forever, that this is the two things really said: don't serve Hashem this way, serve Hashem that way, and may the fear of heaven be upon you. What was it that informed his teaching? So again, it's not the only thing he said. So there's a story. It's found in Avot de Rabbi Natan. Avot de Rabbi Natan, I'll explain a little bit a different date. It's a much more expanded Mishnah of Avot. Has a lot more information that we don't find in Pirke Avot itself. But in the 5th chapter of Avot de Rabbi Natan, it quotes this Mishnah, and it gives us a story. It tells us that Antigonos Ish Socho had two students. One's name was Baitus, and one's name was Tzadok. If you know a little bit of Jewish history, you'll note those two names end up not being such good people. The Baitusim and the Tzdukim. The Tzdukim are in English the Sadducees. There was the famous split between the Tzdukim or the Sadducees and the Prushim, those who we would call the religious and those who went not just off the derech, but were against the religious. And how did that happen? So they were students of his, and they came to a conclusion of like, wait a minute, dude, we're not getting any reward for this. This is really stupid. Why are we doing all these mitzvot? I mean, come on, we're serving God. Like, hey, a little bit of recompense, a little something here for it. And they kind of like spread that word, and there became people who came by Tusim and Tzdukim. As a result, people who decided to what I refer to as a la carte Judaism. I'll take something from column 1, take something from column 2, maybe column 3 I'll skip. Okay, call it a la carte Judaism. So they kind of not invented it, but it became very well known back then. And therefore, he said, as a result of that, don't serve Hashem for some kind of reward. That's not why we serve Hashem. You know, when a couple is married and one of the spouses asks the other spouse to do something or check on something or get something, so like, hey, what's in it for me? I would hope not. You need some serious help if that's the case. You do it out of love because you want to help the other. You don't just, it's not normal to say, oh my gosh, of course I'll pick up that carton of milk for you. I love you so much. Okay, that's a little bit weird, right? But you're doing it because it's something that you want to do because you love the person. So he's saying in a sense, a similar idea here. And he was horrified by the students he ends up with, the Baitusim and Tzedukim, who end up really causing a lot of problems for the Jews at multiple times. There are certain halachot that were in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, as a result of to say that halacha does not go like the Tzedukim. We have to show it's like the Prushim and not the Tzedukim. But again, Bezrat Hashem down the road when there's a history class, we'll touch on that a little bit.
Got to pick them up after you and say, well, I'm going to do this, and then I expect him to,
Right. It's not a matter of quid pro quo. Right. That's not what it's about. Antignos. Why? Very good. Ask why Ish Socho. That's good. Okay. Antignos is because the influence of the people, the time period. Right. The assimilation and like for example, we know plenty of people who have. Myself and my brother, and my sister are, I think, quite rare in the people who were born in the late 50s, early 60s, that we really only, among my friends, everyone had an English and Hebrew name. We were never given English names. So, but most of my friends have English and Hebrew names, and many of them just go by their English name. So that doesn't mean, they're not religious. No, it's just that's the time. So Antignos was that. But why call him Ish Socho? Good call. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that also. There is a commentary I mentioned last week. We're going to hear from him much this time throughout the Pirke Avot, named the Rashbetz. He said that anytime it says Ish something, and we'll see it a number of times in Pirke Avot, it means that person was the gadol of that place. He was like the top person, top rav or leader of the community, potentially of Am Yisrael at that time, but most seem to say like that is the leader of the people of his community. So very good. So let's talk a little bit then about this whole idea of what he's trying to tell us. Does it sound like you should never have in mind any potential reward? Is that what it sounds like he's telling us? What do you think? He's saying, what do you mean? Focus, what do you mean?
What the purpose of it isn't always.
Right, the purpose isn't the reward, but
purpose is
it's serving Hashem. But I'm asking, is he implying that there should never be a thought in your mind about a reward? No. Right. Exactly. So, right. You definitely want.
You give the pleasure you get.
Okay, you give what you get. Very good. It's reciprocal, and we will see that in Tefillah multiple times when we talk about Shemona Esrei B'ezrat Hashem.
Give without loving, but you can't love
without giving. That's very true. As a matter of fact, there is that's great. That's great. There are those who say that the shoresh of le'ehov is not aleph hey bet, but it's hey bet, which means to give. Hav means to give, but it doesn't really work. Sorry, I know there are linguists who say that, but I'm not a linguist, but I'm a pretend one. I'm not a rabbi, I just play one on TV. So Rabbeinu Yonah tells us that it's not that we shouldn't serve Hashem only for, we can. It'd be very nice if we serve Hashem 100% with absolutely no thought of it. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've ever said, oh man, I did this, I hope Hashem rewards me. It's not in my mind. Many people, yeah, okay, especially people who are becoming more religious and say, look, we want to do the right thing, but also know that there's this concept of reward in the world, and there's going to be something you get out of this. Okay, but meaning it should not be your motivator. That's what he's trying to tell us. So the underlying theme is not doing something for the sachar, for something for the reward. And let me show you why, again, going back to the example of a job or of a worker, how that really plays out in our minds in the real world. You take two people from that company that I was just mentioning before, that mythical company. You got the line worker who, as soon as the bell rings, they're out of there. And you have the person who's the son of the owner, and they both get a paycheck. I'm assuming the paycheck for the son's owner's son is a little bit higher. And you ask them, how do you relate to your paycheck? What does it mean to you? Or how do you relate to your job? Let's do that instead. How do you relate to your job? What do you feel about it? It's enough for me to, I work so I can buy my beer. I used to know a couple of people that I didn't understand the expression at first. I was so naive. They said, this guy just drinks his paycheck every weekend. Okay, I knew some guys like that. So how do you relate to your job? So the guy who said, again, it's because this way I can buy my beer, I feed my family, whatever. So he's working for the paycheck. The other person is, look, I want to grow the business. Yeah, it's good to get the paycheck. It's nice to build up, but I want to see this. I could see, 10 years down the line, this is going to become my business. And so who is more invested in that company? Obviously, this is the son of the owner. Even if he's not the son, person who's involved. I wasn't the son of the owner, thank God. But I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I really felt very strongly and very passionately about the company I worked for. So that this way, you understand that the relationship is closer and stronger. It's not about the reward. So that's really part of what he's trying to tell us in this part also. In addition to that, the Rashbetz also tells us that this is not a standalone statement. Remember, Antignos, was a student of Shimon HaTzadik. What did Shimon HaTzadik tell us in the last Mishnah? He said on three things the world exists or is sustained. We talked about the fact there's different Girsaot. One of those is Avodah. And we decided that Avodah was at the time Beit HaMikdash was Korbanot, there's the sacrifices. After that was davening, which we refer to now as the Avodah Shebelev, the work of the heart. And then in addition to that, it also in very general terms is service of Hashem. So the Rashbetz is saying that Antignos Ish Socho is not just mentioning this as an aside. He's trying to connect back to his teacher and said that one of the things that Avodah, one of those three things, yes, Avodah. But how do you do it? You do it in such a way that you're not doing it just for the reward. But how does that connect then to the last statement? I think all of you have heard me say this at different times, at different classes, that this is a roses are red question. If you don't remember what I'm talking about, I'll repeat it. Roses are red, violets are blue. I like peanut butter. Can you swim? What? It doesn't flow. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't rhyme. So what are you exactly trying to tell me? The beginning of the Mishnah tells us what to do and what not to do as servants of Hashem. Now, I want to also make sure we understand something. The word Eved, we translate two possible ways in English, at least. One is a slave, and one is a servant. What's the difference? Is the slave is property. As halachically speaking, a slave is property of his owner. We don't have slaves nowadays. But a servant is exactly serves the master or serves the owner, the boss, whatever it might be. So if a Jew looks at his avdut, his work for Hashem as slavery, versus looking at it as service, not servitude, but service, it's a completely different gisha, a completely different approach. And that's also a mindset. So he's also intimating here that we're not eved in the sense of a slave, but in the sense of an oved, like someone in modern English, in modern Hebrew, oved means an employee. There's the ma'avid, who's the employer, and the oved was the worker, the employee. So, but if we look at the words, it's two statements first, right? A lot of we talked about this before, that a lot of Pirke Avot is going to be in threes. So there's really three things here. One, don't serve Hashem just for the reward. Number two, serve Hashem to not necessarily to get any reward. And then it says, kind of like just hanging out there, and let the fear of Hashem, of the heaven, be upon you. So before Yocheved said something in the beginning, it's about Yirat Hashem. So we know that there are two sides of the same coin, which you talked about in Mesiyat Yesharim, we talk about it in Tanya, we've talked about it already in Pirke Avot, talk about it in Tefillah. It's like, because it's a theme throughout our service of Hashem. And that is, there's two parts to our service. We serve out of Ahavat Hashem, love of Hashem, and Yirat Hashem, fear, awe, or awareness of Hashem. Okay, I like to translate the word as multiple ways. There has to be a fear. But what does it mean, Yirat Shamayim? We saw guys say Yirei Shamayim, he's unbelievable, right? So we use certain terms colloquially, and here's a good word. Do you know what fungible goods are? You probably do in accounting. Fungible goods, yes, are the things that are easily, like for example, if I buy interchangeable. Let's say I paid for 10,000 bales of hay from the guy has 20 silos, right? And I say, okay, here's $10,000 for X amount of bales of hay. He can choose from any silo, assuming they're all the same sug, that I can, they're fungible goods. I can take from this one or that one. It's the same thing. You can't tell me don't take this. So why was I saying that? What was I talking about? Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah, but why? God. Oh, so we sometimes use it. I'll be back. I'm back. We sometimes use certain expressions interchangeably because we think they're the same thing. We say Yireh Hashem, he fears God. Yireh Shamayim, he fears the heavens, the implication, of course, is he fears Hashem. But we also have to understand that there's a specific meaning to Yirat Shamayim. It's more than just fearing Hashem. It's a certain level. It's the level what's called Yirat Romimut. What is Romimut? What's Ram? What's that mean? Romimut in English is the magisterial God. Okay, so it's not just Hashem. I shouldn't say just. There's no such thing. It's not Hashem. It's Hashem with not just a capital H or capital Yud K Vav K. It's the crown. It's the whole everything. It's the grandiosity of God. It's the looking out at the stars at night and saying, "Wow, Marabu Ma'asecha Hashem." It's that passion, that connection to not just Hashem gives me the food, Hashem gives me life, and I know that, and I do his mitzvot, but it's like, wow. Anyone here been to any palace in the world? Yes. Anyone been here to the Hermitage in Russia? You walk into these places and you go like, whoa. Like you could just feel the power of such a place. For whatever the Kremlin stands for, it doesn't stand for. Whatever the Congress stands for, it doesn't stand for. Like you just go into the Havdil, just like you're just like blown away by what you're standing in front of sometimes. And that's not nature. That's all man-made, right? And here we talk about standing in front of Hashem. So now we're taking the two parts really of this Mishne and put them together. The first part of the Mishne, the first two statements, have to do with Ahavat Hashem. We serve Hashem out of Ahava. But we can't leave out of the equation the Ir'ah, the Himorah Shamayim Alechem, right? You have to have the fear of the heavens upon you. It doesn't just mean to be in fear of Hashem. It means to be aware of the greatness of God. Because again, I can say I love Hashem. I can say I do my mitzvot because I love Hashem. But we know that you love your spouse different than you love your parent. You love it's a different kind of love, right? I can't explain them. You can't explain love. So forget that idea. But you're talking about maybe different levels of love. So the love of Hashem is much grander and broader when you talk about Yirat Romimut than just, I love Hashem. Okay? So that's what he's also trying to tell us here. I was going to say something else here. Let me just see if I may have a note here before I forget. Use your head. 1 minute. I thought there was something else I made myself a note that says, don't forget. Of course I did. Okay, that's fine. Okay, first of all, any questions on this Mishnah before we go on to one more? No? Yes? Okay. The next Mishnah is introduced by two people of one named Yosef ben Yoezer ish Tzreda and Yosef ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. They were the beginning of the time period of the Zugot. Zugot, again, we talked about when I gave the overall introduction, was the time period of the pairs. And what were they? Beginning at 142 before the Common Era until 40 of the Common Era. So about 180 years, approximately. One was the Nasi, and one was the Avbeidin of the Sanhedrin. They replaced the job of the Kohen Gadol, because in general, the Kohen Gadol is the one who was the leader of Am Yisrael. And of course, if you know a little bit about Jewish history, you know by the time we get to this point, the Kohen Gadol was a bought and paid for position. It was became very political and not what we picture when we say the Avodah on Yom Kippurim. Not at all, unfortunately. There were 5 pairs. We're going to hear from all of them in different Mishnayot. And the Hillel HaZaken is in Hillel and Shammai, were the end of the Zugot. And they are quoted not just in Pirke Avot, but you'll find their names in many places in the Talmud, especially in Mishnah, especially Shammai and Hillel. We'll hear from them tremendous amounts of times, as we all know. And they also had different personalities. Very often, you find when you have pairs, Rav and Shmuel were heads of academies in Bavel. But Shmaya Naftalion, Shammai and Hillel, Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan, Yeshiva Shalim, they worked together, they worked in tandem, and they also had different personalities, but they also had certain things in common. So from the category of this happens to me thousands of times, let me tell you something cool that happened to me about, what time is it now? 9:30 almost, about an hour ago. When I prepare for this class, any class, I'm prepared in advance. It's not like I'm about to walk into a class. Okay, what am I going to say? I can't do that because it's also insulting to the people I'm trying to teach. So yesterday and a couple of days ago, I was already writing some notes and going over some stuff, and I came across a Mishnah that said, let me just find it here, that says that they were known as Anshe Eshkolot. Literally means the people of clusters. What did that mean, though? It meant that they had within them all the midot tovot, and especially Yosef ben Yoezer, we're going to talk about in a minute, all these wonderful, tremendous, good midot. They were like the best at midot. I'm in the middle of learning hopefully more than just a Pirke Yomi of Mishnah, and I did that one this morning. Just that, about Anshe Eshkolot. I came across this morning, and it mentions Yosef ben Yoezer, Yerushalayim. Again, this happens all the time. I really, years ago, should have started writing all these down. It's like, it is just absolutely incredible. Anyways, so they're from the Tkufa of beginning of the Tkufa of the Zugot. I already told you what they did. So Yosef ben Yoezer was a Talmid of, I did forget one thing, I think. Let me see, I remember it now. Let me go back. No, it's going to be in this Mishnah. I'm okay. This lack of sleep for about 3 or 4 weeks is really not good. It's not good. So Yosef ben Yoezer was known as not just an Ish Eshkolot, but he also was, we said that Antigonos was 2 generations before the Chashmonaim. He's a generation right before the story of Hanukkah. In addition to that, he was a Kohen. And in addition to that, he was known as the Chassid Shebekuhuna, the pious one of the Kohanim. Why? What made him so special? He was extremely careful never to become tameh, to become ritually impure, which meant he couldn't come in contact with a bug. He didn't come in contact with a dead body, which a Kohen can't do anyways. He couldn't come in contact. There's so much that Kohanim had to be careful about. And that they would have to go to the mikvah if they became tameh, but he was always tahor. And because of that, he wanted to always remain pure. It wasn't just because he didn't want to get tameh. He understood that the ramifications for his neshama and everything else. So they called him the Chassid Shebekuhuna. And again, as I mentioned before, the Ish Eshkolot. Let's read just the first statement before we read what they said. Let's read the first statement. I want you to ask me a question. Okay? Yosef ben Yoezer, Ish Tzreda. Yosef ben Yoezer, a person, again, Ish, meaning, according to Rashbet and others, means that he was the gadol of his area. And Yosef ben Yochanan, Ish Yerushalayim, Kiblu Mehem. Okay? So they received from them, right? They got their Torah from them. Any questions? Okay. So we normally mean that the person was just mentioned before. Right. So what's wrong with
them? There's no them. It was Antigone.
Say it again.
There was no them before them mentioned, although
Right.
there was. It's just Antigone.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Judith. Judith. When did I call you Judith? Oh, man. Whatever. Mrs. Lewin, how's that? So there's 2 possible answers. The question is, why say you got it from them when the person before was a single person, it was Antignos, right? So you could say that he was the power of like so many people. I'm going to give you my perspective of that in a minute. Or more than likely, it's because he got it from Antignos, who got it from Shimon HaTzadik, who got it from working its way backwards to, in other words, it's part of the shalshelet or the chain. This is based, say it again? And his Beit Din. Okay, so it says, that's in the, which commentary? Art School? In which one? Oh, the book. Oh, I saw, maybe you showed me that. It's very good. So according to this opinion in that book over there is tell me what it says in there. Antignos and his Beit Din. Actually, I didn't even look what Rav Kahati said. I tell you the story about me and Rav Kahati? I'm going to tell you a quick story. Okay. Too many stories I got. Let me see, him. Yeah, right. So what he's quoting over there is the Meiri. Meiri says Antigonos and his Beit Din. Okay, so I'm going to digress to this one quick story. Then I'm going to tell you what does it mean. Like it also could be Behem, meaning it's like the power of many people. In 1976, I came to Shalavim to learn. And just a little before that, Rav Kahati Zatzal came out with his Perush on Mishnayot, which was groundbreaking. It was a massive change. Because until then, I mean, you had the Bartanura and others, not the wine, that's the commentary on Mishnah and others, but this was really the first modern Hebrew commentary. He didn't start to write the commentary until he learned Shah 7 times. So it came out, and I saw it in the Beit Midrash, and I said, I have to have this. And at that time, the only way you can get it was buy it from him and buy it for God. You had to go to his apartment and buy the set from him. So I decided to go into Yerushalayim. I buy the set, I bring it back, I come home to Yeshiva, and I'm one of the first ones to get it. And so, oh, it's so cool. Did he write a bracha? And they said, oh, you idiot. How did you not ask him to write a bracha? So I decided, okay, next time I go into Yerushalayim, I'll ask him for a bracha. So I took one of the volumes I was in the middle of learning, and I brought it to him. I asked the Rav, can I have a bracha up to write? He says, no. Why? He says, I only write my bracha in the first volume. Okay, all right, fair enough. I go back. I decide I'm going to go back. I get the first volume. I get ready to go on the bus, and the word comes out. He died that day. Oh, I was devastated. Okay, but to make matters worse, that Shabbat I was actually in Bayit Vegan for Shabbat. And I went to shul, and I sat down, and someone tapped me on the shoulder and says, don't sit there. Okay, I turn around. It was his seat. While they're sitting Shiva for him, I'm sitting in his seat on Shabbat. Okay, that's the parenthetical digression. Now, why I'm going to give you. Now, I've never seen what I'm about to say. You can accept it, not accept it. You can disagree or agree, but I do think it's true. By Ashkenazim, you know that before Musaf on Shabbat, as the paragraphs of Yikum Purkan. It's been a while. As Yikum Purkan means Shemaya. And in the end of it, it says, whoever works and is involved in the tzorchei tzibur and working for the community, Hashem should bless him, blah, 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 blah. But the grammar is wrong. It says, v'chomi she'oskim. Should say, v'chomi she'osek, or chol ha'osek, or kol ha'oskim. It can't say, chomi she'oskim, the tzorchei tzibur. My take is that there are people, every community has them, that seem to do the work of 100 other people. Every organization has, you have 100 people, 3 work, 25 sit on the sidelines, and the others take the credit. It always happens. Always, 100% of the time in communal work. Okay. But there are people who really do, and very often those people do it very quietly, and they get a lot done. And they have they get done more than 25 people. How many times have you seen where a person works in an organization? This happened to me one time. I worked for Bnei Akiva. I was jobbed out when I was put into servitude in Bnei Akiva for about a year, which was actually great, more than that, a great experience as a coordinator for a program, 2 programs, one from Australia, one from South Africa, an educational program here in Israel. And it just, after 2 or 3 seasons of it, I ended up with an ulcer. It just was too much for me. So I had to stop. They replaced me with 3 people, not because I was so good, but I was really always doing stuff. And they realized in order to make sure that someone doesn't die from a heart attack, we'll hire 3 people instead of, so they split it up between 3 people. So that's my point, not about me. Point is that every organization, every community, every shul, every company, they have the people who do a lot more than's even necessary, that's required of them, because they want to give, and that's their nature. And that's why I say that it is very possible that Antigonos Ish Socho, he worked alone. He was Antigonos and Beit Dino, but he was the guy. And he did so much. It's also a possible reason why it says that Yossi ben Yoezer and Yochanan Ish Yerushalayim Kiblu Mehem, as a kind of a hat tip to Antigonos for being such an amazing individual. Okay, let's read the next Mishnah here. Okay, Yossi ben Yoezer Ish Tzveda, Yossi ben Yochanan Ish Yerushalayim Kiblu Mehem. In this Mishnah, we're only going to hear from Yossi ben Yoezer, and the next week, Bezrat Hashem, we'll hear from Yossi ben. Why did I say before we're going to meet them? Right? It doesn't mean they're going to really walk in here, but I am not nor is he ever a student of Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav. Never learned from him, never heard him speak in person. I've heard some of his stuff online, which brilliant man. I'm from Chicago, so is Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, his brother. But I wasn't a student of the Rav. But there's certain things that he would say that became like everyone knows that he said this or he said that. And one of them was that he was, to him, when he sat to learn the Rambam, he wasn't learning from the book. The Rambam was there with him in the room. He says, I'm coming in the room. Rabba's sitting over there and Shmuel is sitting over here and the Rambam's sitting next to me. That's how he looked at Torah. And it brings it alive. So the closest I ever came to that was I was sitting learning in Beit Midrash in Chicago. I think it's my senior year. And so we're learning something in Rashi. And my Rebbe was standing right by, and I'm reading it out loud with my Chavuta. And I said, okay, Rashi says, okay, V'ayin Masechet Psachim Kuf Tetvav, whatever. There's no Kuf Tetvav. Maybe there is. Says, okay, Rashi says, and okay, and look over there. And we just continued reading. So my Rav was standing there. He says, Zev, didn't Rashi just tell you to do something? He says, what do you mean? He said, look up the Gemara in Psachim. Actually, he said Psachim. Okay. I said, okay. He says, let me ask you a question. Before I got up to get the Gemara, he said, let me ask you a question. If Rashi was sitting right there and he said, you know what, Zev, I have an idea. If you understand this a little better, just go grab the Psachim off the shelf and bring it over. Would you do it? I said, of course. He said, he's sitting here with you. He's telling you to do it. Spoiler alert, I don't do it. But if I learn it online, I can click on a link. See? Rashi was ahead of his time. Okay, so let's see what he says. Yossi ben Yozer said, Yehi beitcha beit va'ad lechachamim. Your home should be a gathering place for wise people. And you should cling to, I don't know what your English says, but what does your English say for meet abek? To the dust, yeah, but meet abek to cling to their dust of their feet. Yeah. You should become dusty. Okay, I like that actually even better. Okay, because it makes sense because avak is dust. Lehit abek would mean to become dusty in the dust of their feet. And we'll talk about that. You should drink their words with thirst. There's a ton here to unpack, so to speak. I'm just going to give you a little thumbnail sketch and we'll get more into it next time. First, the word va'ad. What's a va'ad? We say we go to the va'ad bite. We have every building here has a va'ad bite, right? Every school has a va'ad chinuch or va'ad horim, a va'ad morim, right? What's a va'ad? In English, it's a committee. The word va'ad, the shoresh, the root, is yud ayin dalet, not the vav. Yud ayin dalet. What's ya'ad? Destination. For example, he got them the ya'ad, right? You arrived at your destination if your ways is in Hebrew. What's the connection between va'ad and ya'ad? Every committee has to have a destination. Otherwise, you're just sitting there, blah, 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 blah. So what does this mean here? Now, we also have another word, mo'ed. A mo'ed we know we translate in English sometimes as a holiday, but ohel mo'ed, which is where Moshe Rabbeinu would talk to Hashem before there was a Mishkan. So the ohel mo'ed, you can't say it was the tent of holidays. It's called in English the tent of meeting, because the mo'ed is also a meeting point. Why are the mo'adim? The holiday is called mo'adim because it's a point where we meet Hashem, unlike the regular days of the week, in a different way. So what's a beit va'ad l'chachamim? So we can have a possible. I'm right now just posing some questions. And why just chachamim? Why wouldn't you want people not chachamim? Right now we have Baruch Hashem, the Litchis is open, they're home to us every week. We have chachamim sitting at the table every week, and I don't mean that facetiously. People who want to learn Torah, they're already chachamim. So, okay, open your home, or your home should be open. It says Yi beitcha beit va'ad should be a meeting place, gathering place, place whatever of chachamim. What does it mean to industify yourself, to become dusty at the dust of the feet of them, the chachamim? You definitely get dust in Mali Adumim and anywhere, and drink with thirst their words. So one more question I'm going to pose is, why drink with thirst? Isn't that mutar? Why else are you drinking? And don't tell me you're drinking because you just want to hydrate yourself. That's not the point here.
Yeah, thirsty, there's more.
Correct. Both of you are correct. There's more hitlavut. There's more connection. You want it more. So I'm just going to mention one thing on that, and we'll stop with that. in Yeshayahu, there's a famous, again, anytime I say famous, it just means I know it. There's a famous pasuk that says, Hoi kol samei lechu lamai. Whoa, anyone who is thirsty, come and let him drink. Duh. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to stay thirsty. No, you're supposed to drink. So it says, Ein Torah, Ein Mayim Ela Torah. It means that water refers to Torah because it says that Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim, but it's a tree. It's also the Mayim. It's a number of psukim. So Navi is telling us that when you're thirsty, go for Torah. So if I don't want to learn Torah, it means like I'm not thirsty for Torah, I'm not going to learn Torah. That's not what it means. You should approach Torah as a thirsty person approaches water. You know, if you've taken a long walk and you ran out of water, or you got off a bus, and I know shockingly in the summer they didn't have air conditioning. I know it's shocking. Or you just exerted yourself, or you exercised, or whatever it might be. Shalom neda. Okay, so now, and you're thirsty. So in English, the word is to slake your thirst, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure in Hebrew we have it called a shluker. You know, the thing with the from the shluk and slaking the thirst. I think that might be the connection. Take a shluk means take a sip. Where's it going? What? It's not. It's used. It's not. I don't know if it's Yiddish. No, it's used in Hebrew. It's used in. Yeah, it's not. It's. I think it's taken from the same shorish, same idea. So the feeling, or after a fast, that first little bit of water that you drink, that's like, and then the coffee, of course, is like feels so good. So you don't want to approach Torah as like, okay, now it's time for me to learn Chumash, and now it's time for me to Pirke Avot. You want to go with a thirst. You want to go with a desire, a want, a need. It gives you the hitlahavut. It gives you the connection. It gives you the love, and that connection is even stronger. So Bezrat Hashem, next week we want to understand these three statements: He beitcha, He mitabek, and Shotevet Sama. And then we'll also learn, hopefully, about Yossi ben Yochanan, and probably not Yoshua ben Pracha. But I will tell you one thing about the next, in Mishnah Vav, just as an aside. Remember, we're talking here, this is now going to be at the time period of Chashmonaim, so you know you're going a little bit further in history. We're getting to the point of Yoshua ben Prachia. Anyone know what he was known for that had nothing to do with Judaism? Supposedly, Yoshua ben Prachia believed Jesus was Mashiach. For a time, he learned in his yeshiva. Jesus learned in the yeshiva Yoshua ben Prachia. And except for certain things that occurred, that was then said, of course, no, he's not Mashiach. But that's, yeah, so Jesus was a contemporary of Yoshua ben Prachia. So we'll get to that. Daya Tzar B'Shat. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.